Houston, Texas, August 16th, 2016. A tub is usually installed in a room that's called a bathroom, which is used to bathe. But it can easily become a deadly weapon. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says an estimated 87 children needlessly drown in a tub per year. In my own words, whether it's neglecting while they're in there or unintentional, I guess, is unknown. In 2012, Sheborah Thomas, 30, her children had been taken away from her after one of them was found wandering the streets with an intoxicated homeless man who in some articles say that the homeless man was high on PCP. PCP is called phencyclidine or angel dust. This drug has a mind-altering effect. Now, CPS, the Child Protective Services, would place the children with the maternal grandmother, her mother. She would eventually get them back. Married in 2008, Denny Ray Thomas, who's the father of Sheborah's two youngest children, was now serving a 3-year jail sentence for possession of PCP. Divorce papers were filed in 2012, but the papers hadn't been finalized, so the couple was still legally married while he was incarcerated. Now living on Tierwester along with her 3 children. Neighbors would say Sheborah hadn't lived there long, only a few months, but they would see the kids who seemed to be happy, clean, and always dressed nicely, which would make this crime even more shocking. The day before that horrific situation occurred that no one can understand, a male friend who was close to the family but did not want his name to be published said Sheborah had gotten a threatening call. It was so bad, he urged her to call the police, of whom responded along with CPS. After the visit, Sheborah felt better about things, saying, quote, "God is on time, like always," unquote. Kiana, 5, and her big brother, Arielon, 7, known as Ray Ray, were at the school they attended. They were dancing and singing in a talent show. As the children arrived home with their mother, she'd pick them up from daycare. Sheborah would cook dinner and feed her kids. Her eldest son had been picked up by his father by the request of Sheborah. She had started to run the bath water for her daughter. Sheborah would tell the police of her own accounts of that night. As her 5-year-old daughter was sitting in the tub, she grabbed her by the head and she forced it under the water. She held Kiani there until she just didn't move anymore. She would take her out the tub and place her on the bed. Next, she called her son to get into the tub. She told detectives that her son was struggling to get from under the water. He even grabbed her hand. As she held his body down with all her might, he finally stopped struggling. She placed him alongside his sister. She wrapped the children's bodies in sheets, and then she took them out back and put them in a garbage can by her house. The next morning, she would take the public bus to go and pick up her paycheck 2 days earlier, but her job wouldn't give it to her, so she went back home. As she tried to bury the bodies by digging a hole and putting her hands in it and with a big piece of wood, but you could still see the bodies. She then rolled them underneath the neighbor's home, and then she returned back to her home to pack. She planned to leave town. She called an acquaintance up and asked for help moving her things. In the article, she had said she killed her children and needed to get out of town. Her acquaintance arrived and didn't want his name mentioned. He's also not a suspect in these crimes. He would help Sheborah move her stuff out of her house. He asked her,
"Hey,
where are your children?" He ignored the comments from earlier. She said, quote, I killed them, unquote. He laughed and continued to help her move her things to his vehicle. While driving away from the house, he would ask her again. She would repeat again the same thing, quote, I killed them. I told you that, unquote. She even told this acquaintance how and where the bodies were. I hadn't read anywhere where he had actually seen the deceased children. He continued to drive her around gathering information. At this time, he knew that she was serious. This woman had murdered her children. Different articles suggest different ways she was arrested, but indeed, she was arrested. While the acquaintance was driving her, he saw a police officer in which he flagged down. Sheborah had a capital murder charges of her own children. At that time, they weren't aware if she had any mental problems. Sheborah had been arrested previously a few times on petty crimes such as theft, but nothing as serious as this. As the news spread, the teacher from the children's school, the neighbors, were in absolute disbelief. But Ray and Kiana's family were heartbroken. The neighbor whose house she had rolled her children's body under, Armando Segal, he says, quote, it's sad, it's incredible, we can't believe what had happened, what she has done, unquote. He also said that he never spoke to the family, but she appeared normal, even smoking outside on the front porch on the weekend. She appeared normal. Her boss, Santiago Wesley of Little Cajun Kitchen, says she wasn't acting normal during his encounter with her. He had fired her over 2 weeks prior. She was complaining about working too much and not spending time with her children. Her boss told her to talk to him later about the situation, but she blew up at him, yelling and screaming and cursing for 2 to 3 hours, and he would relieve her of her duties. She came back 2 days prior to payday to pick up a $47 paycheck. She was yelling, screaming, sweating. He said he wanted to call the police, but he said, quote, you know, I didn't, unquote. Family of the children didn't understand why she would do this. An aunt of the children, Keita Thomas, she said that she would have gladly helped out with taking the children if she needed time. This is something she really didn't have to do, kill her kids. Friends in her life said that she would have done anything for those kids. What was really going on? Why did Sheborah do this? Father, who wanted to remain nameless, of the 12-year-old, had dated her for 5 years. He refers to her as Peaches. He says that this was definitely unlike her. That evening she hugged her son and she was smiling, and nothing seemed out of place when he came to pick up his child. He said, quote, "I'm so thankful for my son is still alive. He could have been dead too. I'm like, that's my world. I don't know what I would have did if he would have died too. I would have lost my mind," unquote. He went on to say that his son had lost his mother, brother, and sister all in one day. Comparisons to Andrea Yates, where she drowned all 5 of her children in a tub on June 20th, 2001. People couldn't believe it. She was a good mother, they said. She was found guilty in 2002, and later the case was overturned, and she was found not guilty by reasons of insanity. She's in a state hospital in Kerrville, Texas. Again, capital murder charges for both of her children under 10 years old. Hopefully, these 2 children who didn't have a chance at life at all will receive some type of justice. It's been over 4 years as of June 2021. Hopefully, we will hear a development soon, and my deepest condolences to the family. People following this case have wondered, what was the motive? To drown your children in a tub? Her landlord would shed some light on it. He said Sheborah had received a call from her now ex-husband's new girlfriend, and she was being threatened. What was actually said, I have no idea, but I can promise you, you can't say anything to me to make me want to kill my children. This tragically dark case would even become darker. Danny Ray Thomas, 34, who sometimes is known by Danny Boy, Sheborah's deceased children's father, had taken the murders of his children extremely hard. He learned about it while in jail. His sister, Keita Thomas, the children's aunt, would look at the video footage shot by a civilian of her brother's final moments alive. She said, quote, "He was not in his right mind," unquote. She said her brother had fell into a deep depression regarding his children. On March 22nd, 2018, a little after 12 p.m., headlines would read, "Another unarmed black man shot and killed," which had gotten national attention. Danny was wandering around the streets with his pants to his ankles while he hit cars as they passed by, and he talked to himself. He was getting into arguments and altercations with bystanders on the street. The video can be easily found on Google. The woman who was recording it can be heard screaming, quote, "Why you shot him," unquote, over and over again. Outside of the cop care cam view, you can hear Brewster telling Danny to get on the ground several times. As Danny was coming towards him with speed, he would shoot him in the chest. Danny was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Court records would later show that during the arrest and affidavits that it was possible mental illnesses with both parents. Now, the deputy who had killed Danny, Cameron Brewster, he said that Danny had a weapon in his hand as he was approaching him aggressively. After several verbal warnings, he would shoot him one time in the chest. He said he also believed that Danny may have been on PCP. Danny Thomas did not have a weapon on him. I couldn't find any autopsy reports to say if he had any drugs in his system. But I did see several articles where people had wondered why a taser wasn't used in this event. Brewer's trial took place August 1st, 2019 in Houston. After several deliberations, Brewster was found not guilty. Now, PCP kept coming up several times. In Houston, Texas, it's the most prevalent drug in impaired drivers. Forensic science cases say 16% of DWI cases between 2013 to 2017 have been involved with PCP. I don't know if Danny Thomas had other children besides the two that were murdered. I hope he did. But if he didn't, it literally means his entire bloodline was murdered.